and open up here and open up here. Yeah, there we go. All right. We're rocking and we're rolling now. Let me go ahead and get the recording started. Record on this. All right. We're recording on Zoom. We're going live on Facebook. We're streaming into YouTube on my channel, Watch Get a Clue. And I'm straight from the golf course. So a little bit lubricated. Let me just go ahead and state that up front. Gonna have a really good time tonight getting into another tip from Get a Clue in 52. This is 5 categories. We started off with 10 tips in the communication section. Then we went for 12 tips in the marketing section. That's 22. And then we started the networking section last week with tip number 23. And that brings us to tonight. Tip number 24 overall is tip number 2 from the networking section. And, tip number 1, let me go ahead and start with tip number 1 as a review. Tip number 1, let me scroll to it here. All right. Tip number 1 is like elevator pitch. This is what we talked about last week. Now, last week, I was in a social setting during the episode. There's a lot of noise around, a lot of competing stimuli. So I got through the reading of the tip, and I promised that this week we'd spend more time. That's if anybody comes on live with me. So if you're out there and you want to come on live, go to tinyurl.com/get-a-clue. That'll bring you right into the Zoom with me. And because we're going to be talking about elevator pitch. So if you want to share your elevator pitch, discuss your elevator pitch, maybe improve your elevator pitch, or fall in line with tip number 2, which is have more than one elevator pitch, come online. Let's talk about it. I'll be ready to help you. Now, tip number 1 was develop an elevator pitch. That was tip number 1. It's really like getting ready for this question. What do you do? What do you do? Say, hey, so what do you do? So what do you do for a living? What do you do? At some point, we're all going to get asked that question. And if we're on salary, because we have a job with a company, we could say, well, I work for blank company, right? If we're entrepreneurial, if we're a top producing salesperson, if we're a leader, if we're dynamic, if we're an influencer, if we're a thought leader, we might want to differentiate a little bit. Anyway, tip number 1. All right, I see Charlie coming on board. Very cool. Tip number 1 in the networking section is to develop an elevator pitch. I go into depth a little bit about like basic questions your elevator pitch should be answering. Who are you? What problem in the world do you solve? And why do you solve it better than anybody else? To keep it super simple. Who are you? What problem do you solve in the world for other people? And then how do you solve it better or different than everybody else that solves it, right? If you only had an elevator, the elevator ride, and to get somebody interested in what you do for a living, to buy from you, to be a fan of yours, to show up to your gig, to buy your product, whatever it is, right? And you only had an elevator ride to get them interested. Hey, my name is blank, and there's this problem in the world called blank, and I solve it by blank, and what makes me better at it is blank and blank. Then what makes me better than anyone else? I mean, that's essentially the basic outline of an elevator pitch. But let me go ahead and get into tip number 2 in the networking section. And it's fun for me tonight. It's repeat tip number 1. Here we go. I'll read word for word. Seriously, develop and practice another pitch and keep going over and over until you master your ability to elevator pitch naturally, organically, and on the fly. The goal is to be in command of different ways to communicate what you do and why you do it better than anyone else, all on your way to creating an interest in others wanting to work with you, wanting to hire you, wanting to promote you, wanting to hang out with you, wanting to follow you, wanting to on and on. All right. Now, use the notes at the end of this section to draft a new set of answers to the basic questions you should answer in your elevator pitch or in your pitch. Your name, profession, and the problems you solve, the competitive advantages you possess, the ways people can learn more about your business, and who your ideal. Dogs are restless. All right. And then finally, the ways people can learn more about your business and who your ideal client is or might be. Anyway, that's the word for word of it all. Very simple. I mean, there's not a whole lot of dialogue here. What we're doing in networking, in tip number one, is I'm asking you to make sure you have an elevator pitch. Make sure you answer certain key questions, right? Who are you? What problem do you solve? How or why do you solve it better than anybody else? Now, in tip number two, what I'm encouraging you to do is have more than one pitch or think beyond. Like, there's a lot of people, and maybe Charlie, this is a good chance to bring you on board because you're the global networker, and networking is your business, right? This is what you do for a living. And I want to talk about people that have a certain pitch that's memorized. And they will say the same thing every time, no matter what, no matter who's asking them or what the situation is. Hey, I'm blankety blank and a blankety blank and blankety blank and a blankety blank. And you, when they're saying it, you can hear that they've memorized it, that they've trained themselves on it. That so it comes off a little robotic, a little stiff, a little just disingenuous, right? A little inauthentic. That's my perspective on things. Um, what we're really talking about here in tip number two, let me just go ahead and speak from my perspective. When we talked about marketing many weeks ago, we had 12 tips on marketing. One of the tips is focusing on branding, your promise. What's your promise to the marketplace? Okay. So now we're here in networking, and somehow, some way, your promise to the marketplace, which is marketing, it's got to show up in your elevator pitch. Okay. Well, I'm a big fan of all of us knowing all of the promises we could possibly make. So let me just give you, like, as an example for me, right? I promise human resources professionals I can reduce their cost per hire. I promise human resources professionals I could increase employee engagement. I promise division leaders or regional leaders or presidents of divisions and regions that I can install a culture of accountability, a culture of integrity inside of your organization. I promise I can keep going, but I'm just thinking about promises that I can make, right? I promise I can get you unstuck. I promise I can increase your productivity. I promise I could double your income. I promise. There's so many promises I can make because I'm a coach, a consultant, a teacher, a trainer, right? So why would I just have one elevator pitch if I have all of these different promises I can make? What I want to do is have command of all of the things on my menu, right? What are all of the things somebody could buy from me? What are all of the things somebody wants from me? What are all the things I could do for somebody that would provide value in their life, right? And I consider that my menu. And now, knowing what my menu is, right? Let's say I've got burgers over here, sandwiches over here, steaks over here, combo platters over there, appetizers over here, drinks over here, desserts over there, right? I've got a menu. If I could deliver everything on that menu, why would I memorize just one elevator pitch? Why don't I instead pay attention to who I'm talking to, what questions they're asking? Let me ask them some questions first and find out who they are and what's going on with them and what do they do for a living and on and on. And I'm going to get into more of that when we get further on in the book, right? We've got 8 more tips to go in the networking section, and all 8 of them combined to give us more strategy when it comes to pulling information out of people that will then allow us to put the best elevator pitch together in the moment. Not because we have one elevator pitch memorized, but because we know we have such command of what we do, why we do it better than anybody else. What do we do? Why do we do it? What are all of the things that we do? And then why do we do it better or different than anyone else? And now we've got tons of elevator pitches. And we're going to pick the right one. We're going to put together the right one conversationally, organically, genuinely, in real time, right? Without seeming robotic or stiff or memorized or not genuine. We're going to put that together because we've mastered who we are, what we do for people, and we believe in all of that stuff. So, all right, 11 minutes into it, get a clue in 52. Tip number 2 is to revisit tip number 1. What's tip number 1? Develop an elevator pitch. So what am I saying in tip number 2? Don't just develop one elevator pitch. Come up with many elevator pitches. Practice and practice and practice and practice and work on it and try it out and call your friends and say, hey, will you listen to a couple of elevator pitches that I'm working on? Right? And get your friends, your colleagues, your associates involved in what sounds good, what feels good, what gives you the energy, what makes people want to learn more about what you're doing. Like, figure it out. Elevator pitch is critical. If you only have 30 seconds with somebody, how in 30 seconds can you get them interested in you? That's where we're at. Tip number 2 in the networking section is tip number 24 overall, and get a clue in 52. I had to stop for a second because we're like almost halfway through the year. Can you believe it? Remember when we couldn't wait to get out of 2020? We're almost halfway through 2021. Are you achieving what you want to achieve? I digress. Charlie, let me go ahead and open it up, or ask you to open up. You're on board with me live all the way from South Africa. Can you open up your mic and let me know if you have any questions or comments or anything about tonight's tip?
Good morning, Coach Jeff, or good evening to you.
Hang on a second. Good. Keep going. Keep going. Let me get the audio going.
When we look at the first question that would come to mind, and that is probably going to all the viewers and listeners' minds now, is, what if I only have one thing that I'm doing? So in essence, the tip of saying created a few elevator pitches. You're a mechanic, you're a mechanic, you're a mechanic. Could you expand a bit on that as to someone who's a bit daunted and overwhelmed with, oh yeah, but Coach Jeff, you're doing a number of things. I only do one thing. How would you advise that person into getting out of the box and thinking about, how can I tailor my different elevator pitches?
Yeah, Charlie, first of all, what a brilliant question you've asked. Because here's the first part of it. Are you ready?
Yes, sir.
You have to start with mastering or confidence or you some sort of certainty around one thing. It's got to start there, right? So the person that says to me, hey, look, I do one thing, I only do one thing, and that's all I do. So I don't need to get a bunch of different elevator pitches because I only do one thing and that's it, and that's it, and that's it, and that's it. That's all I do. It's all I want people to know that I do. I don't do anything else. I don't want people to think I do anything else. I don't want to. All right, for that person, right on. Then go ahead, master that elevator pitch. That's tip number 1. Go ahead and master it, command it, own it, and deliver it conversationally. Deliver it, nonchalant. Deliver it as effortlessly as you breathe and blink. Are you with me? If it's really the truth that you only do one thing. Now, when I put my coaching hat on, I'll call bullshit and I'll say, no, you do more than one thing.
Yes.
Anybody that wants to argue with me that they only do one thing, go ahead and, info@getaklu.net. Go ahead and go to getaklu.net and apply for 2 complimentary coaching sessions. Are you with me? Put your contact information in the chat box. You get 2 complimentary coaching sessions with me. And I promise you, after 2 complimentary coaching sessions, you're going to realize that there's a lot of things you do for people and that you need more than one elevator pitch. Now, for those of you that are rigid and stuck and committed to one thing only, and that's your comfort zone, you want to grow and you don't see your menu expanding beyond that, okay, go ahead and master one elevator pitch. Go ahead and do it. There's 10 tips in the networking section, and if you follow 9 out of 10 of them, right on, you're probably going to do all right. Okay, but the second tip is to have more than one pitch. To think more about what you do for people, to expand your mindset, right? What is peripherally related to what I do for people? What else can I offer people? I'm going to tell you, I'm going to quote my good friend Damian Elston right now. And I don't know if he got this from someplace else, right? Whatever. But I'll quote Damian. He says, look, he uses the example of protein powder. Charlie.
Yes, sir.
Ask me what I do for a living.
What do you do for a living, Jeff?
I sell protein powder so that people can get fit.
What type of protein powder is it?
Oh, the best on the market.
What makes it the best on the market?
Oh, all the ingredients.
What are the ingredients?
Well, do you want me to read the label to you, or would you like to try some?
Well, if you could give me at least 4 or 5 premium ingredients in it.
Well, I could give you some free samples and you could read the ingredients or take them to a lab. Would you like some free samples? Hey, anyway, thank you for role playing with me. Charlie, do you hear what's going on? If I only got protein powder, that's it. I'm going to find myself on a dead end, aren't I?
Yes.
All right, let's do this again. Ask me what I do for a living.
What do you do for a living, Jeff?
I make sure people achieve their fitness goals.
And how do you do that?
Well, there's a lot of different ways.
Okay. Do you have a program?
It depends on the starting point for each person I work with. Some people are really good on diet, but they suck on resistance and they suck on strength. Other people are really good at, endurance, but they suck on resistance and they suck on diet. Some people are good on diet and they're good on endurance, but they're weak. They can't lift anything to save their lives. So I customize my approach. And sometimes what they need from me is protein powder. Other times they need an exercise regimen. Sometimes they need me to be with them on the beach doing the exercises that I recommend. Do you hear the difference, Charlie?
Absolutely.
When I said all I do is sell protein powder, I'm going to be backed into a hole at some point.
Yes.
So if all I sell is protein powder, all I'm trying to do is make money. But if I'm trying to help people achieve their fitness goals, my money will come if people achieve their fitness goals. Now I got a bunch of different ways that I can help people do it. So I'd have more than one I would have more than one elevator pitch.
Yes, and that is where my second question was going to go to is, depending on the environment you are in.
Yep.
Like you'll be going to different networking events, and you obviously going to networking events, you need to know why you are going to that event and what your outcome needs to be at the end of the day. So you have now, for example, in the role playing we did now, is you are at a networking event, you've maybe accompanied your wife, and it was maybe a charity event where there's a lot of women and so forth, and it was something about pots and pans, whatever it may be. You then know who you would then be having to speak to, and then you could relate or have a different elevator pitch than when you are going to the normal fitness groups or to a gym or to an event that sells sports equipment.
Well, yeah, yeah. I don't hear a question there though.
Yeah, what I'm saying is you must be able to adapt your elevator
Yeah,
pitch.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay, now I know where you're going. Yeah, and you might know this from we did this last year. You were on board every week last year, right? So you have the benefit of having been on board when I've read all 10 tips in this section. So um without ruining it tonight for what's coming the next 8 weeks, realize that there are tips on their way in this networking section. It's going to make what
Yes,
I'm saying tonight a lot more fruitful, a lot more
yes,
beneficial. For now, the tip is last week, develop an elevator pitch. This week, revisit rule number one. Keep working on it. If you only have one, make it, like understand it so good that it comes out naturally and conversationally. But beyond just having one, I recommend that you think about all of the things that you can do for people and develop elevator pitches around every brand promise that you might be able to make. Now, I
yes.
offer variations of brand promises that I make in my marketing, right? Like,
Hmm.
I promise I can help you know yourself better. I promise I can help you find or attract a soulmate. I promise I can help you get rid of toxic relationships. I promise I can help you reduce cost per hire, increase sales, increase employee engagement. I bet I on and on and on and on. There's like dozens, literally dozens of promises I can make, right? And that's me because I'm lucky. It's all communication, right? Communication affects
Yes,
everything. You increase communication, you take care of everything. So I have a lot of different promises I can make, but it's important for me to know how to communicate those promises in 30 seconds or less.
yes.
So
No,
what I think that you're saying, and we're going to elaborate on tips that help us with this in the next 8 weeks,
yes.
is what we really want to do, really, 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 and I don't want to let the cat out of the bag, but you're forcing my hand here, Charlie. What we
No,
really want to do is pay very close attention to who we're talking to.
exactly. This is basically where we were getting to, and I was also very careful not to let the cat out of the bag. Being a networker myself, and also having done the sessions last year and elaborated on them, but many a times, and this is one where I would maybe like to add is the the lame question of what do you do at times comes when people meet each other.
Yeah.
And that's the first thing that happens at networking events.
Yeah.
So what do you do? I think that has become like the lamest question around because
Well,
you
yeah,
continue.
well, it's listen, I'm gonna interrupt if I know where you're going with this. It's a pretty screwed up question for a lot of reasons, right? Okay. But it's a great question for the people that are ready for it.
Mhm.
Ask me what I do.
What do you do, Jeff?
I wake up every day and I figure out how I'm gonna deserve my wife and kids.
You see, so somebody goes,
Okay? Like I can answer that however I want. If I'm ready for that question, I can
yes.
answer it. Ask me what I do.
What do you do, Jeff?
I cheer for underdogs. What do you do, Charlie?
Well, I love to ride my bike in the morning, or I love to go for a jog in the morning.
Yeah, see what you're doing is you're trying carefully to make sure you're answering from a personal rather than a professional level. But I just want you to know, like to me, it's okay. Like if we're networking and we're like we understand we're in a networking environment, I might just say instead of "Hey Charlie, what do you do?" I might say, "Hey Charlie, what do you do professionally?"
And that is where we were going to, or something like, what interested you in this event? Um,
But that's different than what do you do?
yes.
Right. So
Uh,
now you're letting the cat out of the bag because I got future tips coming up in the next eight
yeah.
weeks about how to approach networking events. But for this
Yes.
question, what do? You better have an elevator pitch ready. And I'm just basically telling you in tip one and two, you have one ready. And if you advance to tip number two, Have more than
Yes.
one ready. Be hyper aware
And
of all of the things that you could possibly do for somebody, and don't rely on just the one thing that you think you do because you memorized one elevator pitch. Don't think to yourself, "Oh my God, I finally wrote my elevator pitch. I have an elevator pitch. Oh my God, everybody's told me my elevator pitch is good, so I've memorized my elevator pitch, and now my elevator pitch is what I'm going to say every time somebody asks me what I do." Well, you're missing the boat. We're going to figure this out over the next 8 weeks, but if you're committed to your elevator pitch, and that's what you memorize, you may forget to interact with who you're talking with, find out more about them, and deviate from what you memorized in order to tell them what they want to hear. It's very simple, but that's what I'm getting at. I want to be in control of all the promises I have for people. I don't want anybody to ask me what I do until I found out more about them. Now I'm going to elaborate on that in the next 8 weeks. I don't want to get that far tonight. Tonight we're talking about tip number 1 last week was develop an elevator pitch. Tip number 2 tonight is revisit rule number 1 and keep working this elevator pitch thing. So Charlie, again, let me ask you, what do you do?
Well, I'm a global connector, though.
And why are you better at that than anybody else?
Well, because I don't just connect people, I connect value to value.
And do you have any sort of like process or criteria by which you screen folks before you introduce us to one another?
Yes, absolutely. I clearly ascertain what it is that you need or the reason why you would want to be connected to the other person.
Who competes with you? Like, is anybody that competes with you? Do you consider yourself to have competitors? And if so, what's your competitive advantage?
Well, yes, I do. There are competitors out there. People are always connecting each other to one another. But my competitive advantage is by doing a basic, clear understanding of, would you actually be a fit to the other person? Or would that other person you want to be connected to be a fit for you as well?
Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and stop the role play here, Charlie. But like right now, I see room for you to improve. I think anybody that does what you do for a living is going to say the same thing that you just said.
Mm-hmm.
And make sure there's a fit. That doesn't differentiate you.
Well, in one sense, it is part of the process, but in really digging into many aspects.
But hang on. Without getting into detail here, Charlie, trust me now and hear me.
Yes. Yes.
Do you see the opportunity that you have?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Remember, competitive advantage is all the answers to 2 questions. What do you do better than anybody else that also does it? So you're going to say, hey, I find out if there's a fit. Well, everybody's going to say that. You have to let me know how you find out what the fit is better than the methods that anybody else uses to find out if there's a fit. That's number 1, right? 2, what do you do that nobody else does? Right? Like, so you don't have to answer those questions right now, but here's what I'm getting at. When I talk about an elevator pitch, tip number 1 last week, what problem do you solve? What competitive advantages do you have that help you solve it better or different than others? Right? And who's your ideal customer? Tip number 2 this week is repeat, tip number 1 and keep on working on elevator pitching over and over and over and over and over again. When I just caught you off guard without knowing I was going to ask you, Charlie, you didn't have a real true competitive advantage.
Yes.
Anybody that commits themselves to being a networker is going to tell you that they make sure that there's a good fit. But what you need to go deeper and tell me, why is your method of screening better or different than anybody else's? Mm-hmm. Does that make sense to you?
100%, Coach.
Okay. All right. I really appreciate you being here to help me make that point. To give me somebody to interact with, of course, as well. All your loyalty. I mean, like, I can't believe it, man. Almost a year and a half we've been doing this, and you've been so consistent being on these sessions. I want to make sure you get tons and tons of value. You're taking the time to be here, so like literally you're getting free coaching, right?
Absolutely. And I really do appreciate it. And appreciate you too.
Yeah, hear what I'm saying, Charlie. A financial advisor, right?
Yeah.
Financial advisor. I'm going to say, hey, what's your competitive advantage, financial advisor? And you know what the most I'm going to say it. Swinging Dick Financial Advisors are going to say. You ready?
Yes.
Well, I really take the time to get to know you. I take the time to really get to know my clients and really like figure out what their goals are, and then I structure a plan around that. How does it differentiate them from any other financial advisor? That's what every financial advisor is going to say they do. Does that make sense?
Got you.
Right. But if a financial advisor says to me, if I say, hey, what makes you different than other financial advisors? And if they say, well, in addition to my Series 6 and my Series 33 and my Series 7 and all of the licenses that I needed to get in order to advise people legally on their finances, I also went through 37 hours of coaching and leadership training where I'm more of a full, well-rounded leader. I'm not just a financial advisor. I'm an advocate for your growth in life. It's not just financial stuff I learned. I also learned, right? Like if they say I learned motivation, I learned accountability, I learned drivers of inner psychology, I learned persuasion, I learned influence, not just financial, not just my Series 6 and my Series 7 and all of the things that the state board will regulate me on. But I'm studying persuasion. I'm studying marriage and family counseling. I'm studying the drivers of human psychology because I want to know what's keeping you in the way from managing your money. Now I have a competitive advantage as a financial advisor, don't I?
Absolutely. So
Right?
because
You see
you
what I'm
are,
getting at there, Charlie?
got you.
Right.
Got you.
So I would be, beware, not just you, but anybody out there, right? It sounds good in your head, but when it comes out to the other person, it needs to sound better or different than anything else they've ever heard.
Got you.
And that's what I'm asking you to spend more time on elevator pitch than most people might. Most people, they memorize an elevator pitch and they use it all the time, and it puts them in a box and it makes them robotic and stiff, and they don't seem genuine, they don't seem real, they don't seem flexible, they can't adapt, they can't ask good questions, find out what's going on with somebody, and create an elevator pitch on the spot that really absolutely fits like a glove everything we just learned about the person that we're talking to. Now, in the next 8 weeks, in Get a Clue in 52, we're going to talk more about how to get that information out of people, aren't we? Right? Charlie, you've been through this before. We're going to talk about how to learn more about people so that by the time we open our mouth, we're smarter. Plain and simple. There's a lot of people out there that are networking, marketing, selling. Hey, let me give you my business card. Hey, let me give you my business card. Hey, let me give you my business card.
Oh, that one.
Right?
There's a section we do get into on that one as well.
Yeah. So I'm like, look, I'm not giving you my business card until I know more about you. Can I ask you some questions? Right? What do you do? Who do you do it for? How do you do it better or different than anybody else? What do people get when they work with you? How does that make people feel? How could you prove it to me? If like somebody asked me about you, where would I point them to make them feel confident about what you're doing? And what are some questions I could ask people to know if they're a really good fit for you? Like that's what we're headed towards later on in the section, right? But when you command those questions, you can ask those questions at networking events. If you follow tip 1 and 2, the elevator pitch that you come back with in return is going to be spot on to everything that you just listened to, right? So we're not there yet. Let's not let the cat out of the bag, but let's start with elevator pitch. Tip number 1, elevator pitch. Tip number 2, revisit rule number 1. Keep working on elevator pitch. Expand to elevator pitches. More than one elevator pitch, or one elevator pitch for every problem you solve. One elevator pitch for every product you offer. Whatever elevator pitch for every service you offer, or experience you offer, or investment you offer, right? Keep on working it. Work it. That's tip number 1 and 2 at networking. Before you ever put yourself in the position to network, make sure you know how to describe what problems you solve and how and why you do it better than anybody else. Period. That's it. And it's not just one problem. If you only solve one problem, you're gonna have a hard time, I think. If you're solving a bunch of problems, then you really want to help people. All right. Charlie, what else? Anything else from you? Questions, comments?
No, other than, I cannot thank you enough for doing Get a Clue in 52. And I'd encourage anyone who maybe picks up in some news feed or wherever is to get on and come and join us. We actually enjoy this interactive coaching and also discussions around topics that will help you increase your business, better your insights, elevate yourself. And the group Get a Clue in 52. You can pick up on last year's sessions as well, and also take some time to, watch some of the Cluby snacks, the flybys, and you got quite a lot to learn that will change your whole perspective on what you do and how you can develop and grow yourself, not only yourself, others around you, and your business as well.
Thank you so much, Charlie. I appreciate that, my brother. It's like you referred to the group Get a Clue to 52 on Facebook, the Facebook group where I live streamed the first 52 sessions. We got through the whole year's worth last year. And, we're getting to the point right now where a year ago, I was just starting to like embrace the fact that I was gonna have to take care of my parents. So like, it was like literally a year ago right now where I started on this road, in Las Vegas and dealing with my parents' mortality. And now, they've passed, of course. And it's been, I just want to say thank you, Charlie, for being here. Like just about, there's an exception here, an exception there, but for the most part, you've been here every week, for the most part. And it means a lot to me. So I just want to go ahead and say thank you. And ask if there's anything else that you have, any other comments or questions that you have for tonight. Get a Clue in 52. Tonight was tip number 24. It's tip number 2 in the networking section. We went through 10 tips in communication, 12 tips in marketing, and now we're in the third section, networking, and we're on tip number, it's got to be right. Yeah,
24. It's 24.
It's 24. Yeah, we're almost halfway through the year. So it's amazing how the numbers get crossed up and everything. I laugh. There's a different conversation in my coaching and leadership training sessions. We've been talking about, quote, time management, and I don't like to call it time management, but we've been talking about task management, self-management, priority management, discipline management, decision management, goal management, calendar management, all these other things to call it other than time, because time manages itself. Father Time has been doing a pretty good job managing time since the beginning of time. So we are fooling, not to digress too much, but we're fooling ourselves when we say, I wish I had more time. I need better time management. I need to manage my time better. I wish I had more time. Forget that. Father Time's got all of that taken care of. Trust me. What we need to manage is our decisions, our priorities, our habits, our calendar, our there's other things that we have 100% control of that we need to manage, but time isn't one of them. Like, time keeps moving. Time doesn't wait for us.
Absolutely.
All right, man. Absolutely. I love you, Charlie. Anything else tonight?
Well, which question's coming next?
Oh, you want a Cluby snack?
Oh, yes.
All right. I do know it. Let me look. Let me consult my journal and see if we have something new and fresh for you. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right. Let's see what we got here. You're gonna have to tell me if this is a repeat. You gotta let me know.
I will.
Cluby snack. All right. Let's see here. Have we talked yet about a world-class coach will not let the roses go unsmelled?
No, that's a new one.
Was that new? Does it sound new to you?
Yes.
All right. Well, there it is. And we can make it sound better. Like, let no rose go unsmelled. but but in raw, a world-class coach will not allow roses to go unsmelled.
I love that. It has more emphasis on on the, what's the term I'm looking for? Like a trainer, the source, like the seed will not allow the flower not to grow, if I'm making sense here. There's a certain term I'm looking for on the emphasis of a world-class coach who will not let a rose go unsmelled.
Oh yeah, a world-class coach will not let a rose go unsmelled. Meaning, a lot of times in coaching, we're dealing with performance and we're dealing with behavior and we're dealing with top performance and top behavior and we're dealing with getting out of our own way and discipline and sacrifice and unstoppability. And a lot of people get into coaching because they are addicted to achievement or addicted to feeling inadequate. So there's some people that like they're accomplishing like milestone after milestone after milestone, but they never stop and smell the roses. They never pat themselves on the back because they're hardwired to look at the next thing. Like they're like it's almost if they're going to get punished if they don't achieve something else. So they never get to be proud of their achievement, which means they basically are they're on a destiny for a I'm never satisfied loop.
Yes.
Does that make sense?
Yes, got you.
Right.
Got you.
So coaching isn't just finding out what's wrong with people and fixing it so that they can get better. Sometimes coaching is telling people how awesome they are and that they need to actually figure out how awesome they are. Like just like stop trying to achieve more stuff for just 1 second and just realize, will you smell this rose? Yeah, you can achieve that next week, but smell this rose first.
Yes.
I digress.
Absolutely. 100%. I love it.
All right, man. Well, it loves you. Thanks for always asking me every week about a Klu snack, man. That's fun.
Actually, I have quite a lot of fun with it.
All right, Charlie. Anything else for tonight, my man?
No, thank you very much, Coach Jeff.
All right.
It's quite, as usual, quite a very good session.
All right. Well, thank you. We're going to wrap up the 24th session this year. We did this last year when I had this version of Get a Klu in 52, but there's so many more improvements to this version. I've cleaned up grammar and spacing and formatting and pictures, and a lot of good stuff has been cleaned up this go round. So I'm happy to be doing this every week this year as well. Oh my God, what is it, 24 weeks plus the 52? That's 76 consecutive weeks of Get a Klu in 52. Version 1 now, second edition, version 2. Now, what's cool about this version, Bo, by the way, just let me go ahead and say this. This version has a preview chapter of the integrity game, which is the book I'm working on, which is the keynote, which is the comprehensive approach to personal and professional growth that I want to put on the map in a big way, the integrity game. So if for no other reason, pick up a second edition of the book so that you can start reading up on the integrity game, and then you'll be ready for when that book comes out. Charlie, anything else for tonight, my brother?
Just say, have a good week, Coach Jeff, and thanks once again. And regards to the family, everyone out there. Again, thank you very much for what you are doing. You are really impacting quite a lot of lives.
My pleasure, Charlie.
And we appreciate you.
Thank you so much. Let's go ahead and seal it with a kiss. Here we go. Mwah. And then back in here, mwah, on the Facebook side. Thanks, Charlie. I love you, brother.